unlocking the genius code, your genius code. And so when we're talking about unlocking the genius code, what we're going to be doing is discussing those things that you may think that are odd or that everyone else in the world seems to look at you strange, but it's the very thing that makes you uniquely you and you powerful. So we're going to be talking about that. This talk almost didn't take place today because, of course, I had some other things going on. So, of course, there's 1,000 reasons not to show up. But I think that this subject matter is important. And what I realize is that somebody needs to hear it. And it may not be on the actual call, but it may be after the call when the person that needs to hear it needs to hear it. But like I said, I'm doing this call that almost didn't happen today because somebody needs to hear it. So let me go on and jump into it. And for anything that you missed, you can go back and listen to. But like I said, it just got started, so didn't miss much. But let's go on and get started. So again, good to see you, Juicy. Today we're going to be talking about unlocking the genius code. So in this, what we're going to do is help you identify within you the genius so that you can begin walking in your power. Because like I said, many of us have been told that what we have are disabilities, learning disabilities, and so forth. And it's because the world wants you to conform to their ideology. So when you're not living out from the space of normal, they say something's wrong with you because you're not being normal. But the fact is, you're actually often operating from a place of genius, and the world just hasn't caught up with you. So we're going to talk about that today. So one of the first things that we need to understand when we're unlocking the genius code within you is that at first, genius rarely looks like genius. It really does. It sometimes, like I said, it may look like dyslexia, it may look like ADHD, it may look like something that society labels as this. You know, society always has to give a label, a title to something to legitimize it. The unfortunate thing is that we buy into the titles and then we say, well, there's something wrong with me. No, in most cases, there's something wrong with society. They just can't see you at your level. So we want to talk about that and we want to delve into that. And we want you to begin to understand who you are as that individual genius. So, like I said, first and foremost, understand rarely does genius look like genius. The world will call it weird, obsessed, delusional. This is what they call undeveloped genius. And again, you may be operating at such a high IQ, for example, that it may look like because you're not comprehending information like the world says you should comprehend information, that it appears to be a learning disability. But actually what's happening is that you're seeing beyond what's being taught. Your mind is operating faster than the information being given to you, or the information is at such a slow rate, it's hard for you to slow your mind down to receive it. So what happens is the world often doesn't know how to communicate. And like I said, what the world will often do is give labels to it. Labels to say that the individual is broke because they're not operating at what we call the norm. But rarely is the norm operating at a place of genius. They're not. So understand the thing that you've been told to be your shortcoming often is your gift. And like I said, don't wait for applause because often the world's going to see you as something being weird, strange. They may say crazy, whatever the term is that they use to identify you. And often when I say the world, this could be your very own family because they don't understand the genius known as you. It's even funny when we step into something like, let's say, the Neville Goddard community, and we start stepping out or thinking outside the traditional religious box, for example. When we step outside that which everyone else seems to be occupied in, all of a sudden they want to put labels there. They want to say, oh, she's in a cult. They're in something really weird. They're in something strange. And it's because you've transcended their awareness of what they call religion. Mr. Lindo and I were talking the other day, and we were talking about just that, being able to have somebody to discuss these ideals with, because you typically can't communicate this stuff to your family for the most part, because they tend to be, like I said, they've been programmed like we were by the mass programming, and the mass programming is to keep you stuck. I had put a post out on my YouTube channel, and basically it says something to the fact that, listen, my goal is to help enlighten you, but if you come with nonsense, I may bring nonsense to you. And this, I'm sure he was a Christian, came out and said, well, brother, you should turn the other cheek, you should be submissive and so forth. That's his story. That's not my story. I'm called to be powerful. So I'm going to convey to you, especially if somebody comes on my channel with foolishness, I'm going to redirect their foolishness and suggest that they go somewhere else. Most people say, well, coach, you really shouldn't say anything. You shouldn't give that comment. If I don't, the problem is, let's say that we get somebody comes on the channel and they're hyper religious. If I allow them to just stress their dogma without countering their dogma, the people that are reading that information, they will start questioning their own belief system. My goal is not to tell you what to believe, but that you believe. But I'm certainly not going to let somebody else bring their own dogma and present it to you as your dogma if that's not what you believe. My goal is for you to discover who the divine intelligence, Mr. Lindo's goal, and my goal is for you to discover the divine within yourself. Our only goal is to tell you that you think. And because you think, those thoughts will reproduce an outcome. If you don't like the outcome that you're seeing, then simply begin changing your thought and changing your world. But our goal is never to tell you what to believe about God, what to believe about, religion, spirituality, whatever. That's yours to choose. And so when people come on the channel, and a lot of times if I'm posting something like a Reverend Ike or sometimes even Neville's material, depending upon what it says, that religious person will come on and like, that's blasphemy, because they don't understand who they are. So like I said, my goal in responding to them is not for them solely, because I'm not going to change their mind, nor is that my goal. My goal is for the other people that may be listening or reading that information, not to get them off track of what it is that they want to be, do, or have, to help them stay true to themselves. Because people, when you're operating in your genius, because it doesn't look like what most of the world says, is mostly often contrary to 97% of the population, if not more. They're going to start to question you. And then if you're not on a stern, firm foundation, you're going to question yourself. And my goal, as much as possible, is not to allow that to happen. If that's what you believe, because you got to understand that there's 8 billion plus people in the world now, I'm told. Understand, of those 8 billion people, no 2 people have the exact same view of God. They don't. So you really got 8 different versions of God, and that's okay. We're all God expressions, and we're going to express God as us with our belief system, and we can't do otherwise, and that's okay. Excuse me. Drink some water here. For the religious person hearing what I'm saying, this is going to sound like blasphemy. And that's only because they've been indoctrinated into the mass programming. And you got to understand, this programming has taken place not over hundreds of years, but thousands of years. People say because it works. No, because it keeps us, the person that I was communicating with, the Christian person I was communicating with about, my stance, he says, well, you just need to be humble and submissive. My question is, humble and submissive to who? To his ideology? To someone else's ideology? You understand what I'm saying? You have to get your own understanding of who divine is for you. Because depending upon who you believe the divine is for you, That's what you're going to live according to. And that's you operating out of your own genius. So the first thing you have to do is understand that your genius will rarely look like what the world says she'll be. You know, like I said, they're going to call you insane, whatever. They're going to, cult, whatever. Oh, you listen to that cult? I can remember Neville giving a talk, and one of his people that would often come to his lectures, she was doing some wonderful manifestations. She had even manifested this trip around the world. And people said, "Why are you listening to that man? Why are you going? Why are you giving that man your money? You know, in short, why are you going to listen to this cult?" Because Neville did not stick to what was deemed the status quo. And so when you step outside that proverbial box, you're going to be challenged. So you got to be, and we'll talk about this. Matter of fact, it's going to be the next step. So accept that genius rarely looks like genius at first, and that don't wait for applause. And again, we'll even talk about that. But the second thing to be mindful of, you got to get comfortable in being misunderstood. Let me say that again. As you walk, I like to call this your authentic self. As you live out your authentic self, you have to get comfortable with being misunderstood. Because in your walking in your authentic self, you're going to make other people uncomfortable because you're not going to be operating out of what they call the status quo. You're going to be, as Steve Jobs said, you're going to be the square peg trying to be fitted, as it were, to the round hole. You're going to do things different. And because of that, one day people are going to say, that person had their own way of thinking, but they got things done. But while you're going through it, they're going to be ridiculing you, they're going to be criticizing, they're going to be questioning you. You have to get comfortable with being misunderstood. You have to start going within. So when we're talking about going within, you have to build in silence. You have a revealed power, but you got to understand that that power is going to, we talk about Superman going into the fortitude, and so all of a sudden he gets rejuvenized. When you go into the silence, and when spirit begins to speak to you, when your inner knower begins to speak to you, it's going to give you some revelation, and you're going to be like, I don't even know what to do with that. I don't even know if I can communicate that because it's not what everyone else is saying. But as you get comfortable about building up that reservoir in the silence and then begin communicating it in what we call reality, people are going to start to recognize that there's something different, unique about you. They're going to discover your unique voice. And the funny thing is, most of the people that we read their quotes and so forth, whether they're living or if they've passed on, when they were going through in their early stages, people were ridiculing them. They were calling them insane. They were calling them crazy. But over time, the things that they spoke about began to be revealed. I was talking to a client the other day, and he works in this facility that when men come out of incarceration, they come to one of his programs. Now, he doesn't own the program, he just facilitates it for other people. But one of the programs in another city wasn't being maintained by the people that were running that particular program. And so what transpired was the people of that particular city said, we're going to shut this thing down. And so the owners really started to panic. And so this man said to them, they're not going to shut it down. Now, he's speaking from his genius. He said, they're not going to shut it down because they need us. We provide a valuable service in that area. And if men come out of incarceration, prison, and they have nowhere to go, there's a concern. We give those men some place to go. We can fix what's broken, but they're not going to shut it down because they need us. So anyway, he had scheduled vacation. He went on his 1 week vacation, and the boss, the person that owns the company, says, "Why is this person on vacation? We need this person here now." And he told the person, his direct contact, "Listen, I scheduled this thing out, 3, 4 months out. This has been planned, and I can't reverse this thing. It's going to happen. Now, you guys have to make the decisions that you need to make, but this is going to happen." Anyway, he's on vacation, and the person that he's assigned to, the person that, is over him, says, he calls him and he says, "Man, I have to reach out to you." He said, "If you were here, I would kiss you on the forehead because what you said came to pass." And the person that was over the program in that other city that failed, they reached out to his boss directly and said, "Listen, we can't speak to this other person because they say they're going to do something and it never gets done. So we want to speak to you directly." The person that said this program wasn't going to be shut down was absolutely correct. They just needed another means to say, "Listen, we need somebody that we can speak to so that we can make this program successful." You have a genius, and you've spoken certain things, you've said certain things just because of your knowing, just because of experiences that you've had. And people wrote that genius off and said, they don't know what they're talking about. And then months, years later, they come back to you and they say, "I don't know how you knew it, but you were absolutely correct." That's that genius, and that's that inner knower. Everybody has it in them, but very few go into the silence, listen to the still small voice, and then act upon it. Most of us, we hear the still small voice. Let me say this. Because the still small voice sounds so often like our own. Point in case, Moses is in the wilderness. He sees a burning bush, and in the midst of the burning bush, a voice comes out and says, "I am that I am," and so forth. And he told Moses to go and speak to Pharaoh and to set the children of Israel free. Moses could have ignored that voice and said, "Listen, I'm just talking to myself." And many people in Moses' camp believe just that. They're like, "Who are you you think that you're the only one who can talk to God? We all can talk to God." And so the judgment of God will come down on these people. I say that to say, often the voice of the divine sounds like your voice. And you're like Samuel. Samuel hears the voice of the Lord, and he goes into Eli, his caretaker. He says, "Master, did you call?" He said, "No, I didn't call you. Go back to sleep." He does it 3 times. He says, "Next time you hear the voice, say, 'Speak, Lord, your servant hears.'" Next time you get that great insight, whatever you call the divine within you, even if you call it inner knower, whatever, say, "Speak, I'm listening." But you can't just listen. You have to act upon what's given to you in the silence. If you don't, what's going to happen is you're going to hear that voice less and less. And pretty soon you're going to be one of those people to say, "God never speaks to me." God speaks to you, but often it sounds like your own voice. I just want to stress that. So go into the silence. Sometimes my silence is me waking up 3 in the morning, and all of a sudden I get these insights, this wisdom, this overflow of information, and I have to process through it. Then I start going, pulling out my Bible dictionary and things like that so that I can get understanding. Don't allow, point in case, quick one. What if Einstein, when he envisioned himself riding upon this electrical wave, just wrote it off? He took that information and he came up with this theory, E equals mc squared, and it changed the world. What idea, what concept do you have that you think really isn't much of anything, but in it, it's very transformative to someone? See, I don't care. People often reach out to me about my new YouTube channel. Say, "Oh, do you want to grow your numbers out? I can help you grow your channel." I can care less what the numbers are. If there's one person, if there's a juicy out there, if there's one person out there that gets what's being said, and they begin to discover the power of their own still small voice. Not what Coach DeCarlo says. It doesn't matter what I said. My only goal is to get you to look within and to get you to understand, like I said earlier, that your thoughts create reality. And if you're not happy with the current state of your reality, simply go about to change your thoughts. You don't need a membership for that. You don't need to join a religious cult. You don't need to go to church to do that. You simply need to begin changing your thought. You're a vibrational being having a human experience. The way that vibration works is through thoughts, feelings, states, attitudes, dispositions. You understand the rest. As you change those things, what you're going to notice is that the thing that we call reality is also going to begin to shift. Okay, so let's move forward. This is something that I have to work on, but you also have to detach from the need to convince. When spirit, inner knower, gives you something, you have to be okay with being the only one. If you're the only one that believes what it is that's been given to you, you have to stand in your genius of what's been given to you and be okay with family, friends, loved ones, associates not believing you, not understanding you. But you got to understand you were once them. You were once them so enveloped in the mass mind programming that you believed that reality was the stuff on the outside, not the stuff that you thought that was pictured, imaged on the outside. What we call reality is nothing more than a reflection of what it is that we individually and collectively have given our attention to. And the more attention to it, the more real it seems. But reality, so called, is nothing more than the mirror of mass thinking. Some people call it a holographic universe, a 3D, 5D, depending upon how you look at it, universe. And it seems so real. Some even suggest that when you step outside, let's say a room, because you're no longer in that room, in all actuality, that room collapses. And it's only as you step back into the room that it appears. I know that sounds insane, but this is when we start talking about quantum mechanics at a subatomic level. We think that what we're seeing is solid. It's not solid. If you were to look at it, what you would see is all these collective particles that are brought together that we call reality. This is why we can shift what we believe, and those particles will also begin to shift. This has been proven scientifically. And this is why they often have to do what they call a double-blind experiment. They do a double-blind experiment because if the person that's a part of the experiment knows what to expect, he can change the outcome. There was a story about a man, and anytime he was in a laboratory, things would go amok. And so they told him one day that he decided to take a day off. And so they said, well, since he's not in the office, we're going to run these experiments. The time that they were running the experiments, they went amok and they couldn't understand it. They spoke with him and he said, oh, I just happened to be driving past the laboratory at that time. That's a true story. Our thoughts create reality. I just want you to get that. Now, just because it doesn't happen, like you, I don't know how many of you are old enough to remember Bewitched, but she used to like twinkle her nose and magically, at that moment, things would shift. Just because it doesn't shift, or I Dream of Jeannie with Barbara Eden, she would just, all of a sudden things would be changed. Just because it doesn't seem to change in what we call a twinkle of an eye doesn't mean that change isn't taking place. Often what happens is it takes reality a moment to catch up with thinking, with thought, with feelings, with emotions. So this is why Mr. Linder will often say, and Neville also said it, we're always thinking ahead of the evidence. And in scripture it says faith is the substance of things hoped for in the evidence of things not seen. Thought, belief, feelings, states, those are first cause. And then they're manifested in what we call so-called reality. So, but the biggest thing I want to address here, you have to be okay with not trying to convince people that don't believe what it is that you're saying. They can't believe because of where they're at. And they can only believe at the extent of where they're at. Now, can they come across some wisdom, some insight that will allow them to catch up with your level of understanding? Absolutely. I've seen it in my own family. But it didn't happen when I was trying to force them to believe. It happened as they observed my life and they started seeing me get results. So then they were open, like, well, we want the same results that you're getting. And so then I was able to tell them how this stuff works. Don't try to convince people, just live the life. And as you live the life, you're going to get people. Some people are going to go their whole life and never get the lesson in this life. It may be in the next transition, the next space that they get it. Yours is not to determine when other people get it. Yours is to understand and walk in your own journey and live from your best life now, whatever that looks like to you. Okay, so let's move forward. So detach from the need to convince others. I kind of touched on it, so let's talk about it again. Sometimes your genius is going to come with unusual instructions. You're going to be told to do things that are going to be strange until you get on the other side of what it is. Trust in a business idea, to reach out and call somebody, to simply say hello to someone. And you're just going to be prompted to do it. And you're going to like, I don't know this person. I don't know them, to reach out to them. I reached out to this young lady on TikTok. She had come from China, and she came from the manufacturing industry in China. And for whatever reason, she popped up in my feed. And so my For You page. And she was saying that, I've been in the US for, this amount of time and I'm struggling. I'm wondering if I made a mistake, should I go back to China? And I watched a couple of her videos just out of curiosity. Now, some of them was those cute videos, they're just kind of posing. So, but then she got into depth. She designed clothes. She worked with manufacturers. And I reached out to her and I simply wasn't selling her anything. But I basically said this: you come directly from China. You know how manufacturers work. You can teach people how to interact with these manufacturers. Matter of fact, you could be the middle person between the manufacturers in China, because of course she speaks both languages and she's knowledgeable in manufacturing. I said, you can create a $27 ebook and tell people how to create a 5, 6, 7-figure business by working directly with manufacturers in China. I said, there's no reason for you to be broke. And that's what I left on the message. She hasn't responded. She may never respond because, of course, she may think that I'm selling something. I gave the gift expecting nothing back. Now, what she does with that gift, if she even reads what was posted, my job, I talked about sometimes the Spirit will give you unusual instructions. Spirit prompted me to reach out to her and give her that information. That was my job. Then I release it and I move on. Sometimes Spirit's going to prompt you to do something odd, something strange. Like I said, just reaching out to somebody and saying hello. And they said, to write a post. And all of a sudden you write this post and people say, I needed to hear what you said. And the funny thing is, when you posted it, you were really uncomfortable. You're like, I don't want to post this. But you were obedient to Spirit and you shared what it was, the Spirit. And I say Spirit, don't make it religious. I'm speaking of your inner knower. that still small voice that speaks within you, it sounds like you. It's going to prompt you. And you're not even going to know why, but you're going to be obedient if you're obedient. And it may not even be on this side of eternity. Good to see you. It may not even be on this side of eternity that you understand what happens, but it's the very thing that you did that could potentially transform not only somebody else's life, but generations to come. And you didn't even know you did it. You just reached out and said hello. It may have, you're saying hello. They said, I don't even think anybody cares about me. All of a sudden you reach out and say, you're not going to know when this is going to happen. You're not going to figure it out. I'm not trying to, when do I have the moment? You're not going to know. It's just you being obedient to your inner knower to do what you're called to do in that moment. Like I said, I had today literally almost decided not to even get on the call because I just had so many things. I'm trying to finish up this book project, trying to, do some things. And so there were 100 reasons why, but I said somebody, even if it's not somebody on the call, there's somebody that's going to listen to this talk and it's going to speak to them at their deepest level. So it's me simply doing what I'm given as unusual instructions. Now, of course, I do this on a weekly basis, but like I said, I had every reason today not to do this. But here I am. Listen to the still small voice. And let me say this about listening. I told you quickly about the story of Samuel, who, he heard the Spirit speaking within him, waking him up, and he would go to his master, Elon, and Elon said, "Good to see you, Juicy, I always appreciate you." And he would go to his master and he would say, "Did you call?" And he's like, 3 times. "Okay, no, I didn't call you." Next time you hear when the voice speaks, say, "Lord, your servant is listening." Good to see you. Your servant is listening. What's going to happen? The reason why, and again, please understand, I'm not talking about religion. I'm just using religious text. John Wick, you kind of late. Where you been, brother? Hey, I'm using religious text as the means of conveying the story. But we're not talking, this is about you. This is your story. I'm trying to convey it to you in a way that you can understand. So when Samuel said, "Speak, Lord," you say, "Speak, inner knower," whatever. Understood. I'm right there with you. I'm right there with you. I was having the exact same thing. Didn't even know if I was going to show up. But brother, I love you and I appreciate you showing up. Thank you. Love you. And so the second he said, "Speak, Lord, your servant is listening," I have these inner knowings, these events or things that happen, and I can almost see things if they stay on this current cycle, how they're going to play out. Sometimes I'll convey it to somebody and love you, appreciate you. You'll get a lot of good stuff. He was just saying that he was going to watch it after. Sometimes I'll get this inner knowing about how this event's going to take place. And sometimes I'll try to forewarn somebody, but a lot of times people don't have ears to hear. So you have to just let it play out. But even in my own life, I can see something, and I'll see something. I say, if I keep on this path, this is going to take this path here, and this is going to happen. So I've learned when those moments come to listen and obey, because I don't want the consequences of my disobedience. You also have the same gift. And there's certain times that you knew that you knew that you knew that you knew that you shouldn't have done certain things, but you did them. God wasn't punishing you. This is what our universe wasn't punishing you. Even the still small voice within you wasn't punishing you. It's the consequences of the action that you took. It's just a byproduct of the action that you took. If you take a small knife and you prick your finger, it's going to cause blood. It's just the consequences of the action. God's not punishing you. If anyone, we're punishing ourselves. What I'm trying to get you to see is that when you're prompted, when you see, okay, I can't do that. I shouldn't be doing that, because that's not going to take me, even if it's just a thought. That thought is not going to take me where I want to go. When you begin to shift that thought, all of a sudden you rearrange your world. Now, because you rearrange your world and the event didn't take place, you start second guessing yourself. Maybe that wasn't going to happen. No, it was going to happen. It was going to happen. You prevented it from happening by shifting your thoughts and taking a different action. When Samuel started listening to the still small voice that he called the Lord, I like to say that the Lord is the law of right decree. Whatever it is that you're decreeing out of your mouth, use right decree. Now, there's also another law. It's the law of reverse decree. That you saying what it is that you don't want. People think that this stuff is like fantasy, make believe, and so forth, but then they keep wondering why their lives are chaotic. The easiest thing to do is to blame the world without. But when we start taking responsibility of our own things, of our own thoughts, words, actions, feelings, states, attitudes, dispositions, and so forth, we start controlling more of what's happening on the outside. We don't just to control who's the president of the United States. I'm not talking about that foolishness. But we can control how the environment responds to us. I was at a fast food restaurant the other day, and I had this taste for an apple pie. They had these great apple pies. And so I said, well, let me get an apple pie. And I just thanked the young lady profusely. Now, before I left, she had almost forgot to give me the apple pie. And she told the guy, give him 2 apple pies. That's the power of gratitude. Did I need the 2 apple pies? No, but I sure loved them. You see my point, though. When you start putting positive energy towards what it is that you want to be, do, or have, and you keep directing your positive energy towards that, what you want to be, do, or have, it can't not show up in your world. But it works on the contrary also. If you keep giving negative energy to what it is that you don't want to be, do, or have, you're telling subconscious mind, you're telling universe, you're telling what Wallace D. Wattles called the thinking sticky stuff that makes up reality. You're telling it, give me more of that. So just be mindful of what it is. My goal is not to tell you what to think, but that you think. And as you think, you do, you be, you have. Okay, so let's move forward. You have to begin practicing. When I say daily devotional, it's you being mindful, you going into the silence, even if it's when you wake up first thing in the morning. Just being mindful of your inner conversations, being purposeful and direct and saying, this is going to be a great day. If you plant the seed that this is going to be a great day, even if it's pouring down rain, and even if you find yourself in a traffic accident, if you're holding the energy of a great day, it's going to be a different day for you in that traffic accident. As somebody said, I told you this is going to be a miserable day. 2 people, same event, but they have totally 2 different outcomes. You're given to choose. You're given to choose, but you have to be mindful. Let me say this, simply be aware of your thinking. But that happens as you go into the silence. The question was, as much as I could read, when you shift your thinking, is it also important to operate the feelings? Yes. Neville said, feelings the secret. It goes back to me stating that feelings, attitudes, dispositions, states, all are vibrational. We think that when we pray, that it's the words that we're articulating, the verbalizations, the words coming out of our mouth. That's not the prayer. The prayer is what you're holding in vibration. You're in a vibrational universe, a frequency universe. So when you pray, Master Teacher says, I thank thee, Father, whatever you call infinite intelligence. He said, I thank you, Father, because I know you always hear me. He understood the power of being in resonance or vibration of that thing that he wanted to be, do, or have. Now, it said that he wept. He didn't weep because Lazarus was dead. He wept because of everyone's unbelief and not understanding how vibration works. You have to be in a vibrational state. A lot of times people are affirming, going back to the question, abundance, for example, health, loving relationship. But they're only verbalizing it at a mouth level. At their core level, at their subconscious level, I'm God. Absolutely. Now, in saying that I'm God, let's understand what we're saying. It's like you being you get a thimble, for those who are familiar with sewing, but let's say a cap full of water. You get a cap full of water out of the ocean. That cap full of water separated from the ocean is as much of the ocean as that full ocean is. But it's not the ocean per se, it's a part of the ocean. Like we collectively are part of the Elohim, known as God, the one made up of many. So it says, in the beginning, Elohim, the one made up of many, said, let us create man, manifestation in our own image and likeness. You're always creating your own manifestation in your own image and likeness. What do I mean by that? What you believe about reality is what's going to show up in your reality. It can't be otherwise. So if you say that I'm going to be abundant, but at your core level, you're still operating from a place of lack, even if abundance shows up for a period of time, you're going to find a way to dissipate the abundance because you're not operating at your core level, feeling level, belief level, visualizing, imagination, so forth, that place of abundance. Listen, let me say this because I want to make this clear as far as manifesting and abundance and so forth. Right now, primarily because of programming, you believe something about money, you believe something about relationships, you believe something about your health. We all do. Be it unto you according to your belief. It can't be otherwise. It says, to him, her who has, more shall be given. Him, her who has in consciousness, in belief system, who's holding the energy of what it is that they want to be, do, or have. They'll see more evidence of that. But to him, her who has not, even which they seemingly have at a reality level because they're not holding it in their core of who it is that they're believing. Good to see you, Drip. What they're believing, they lose it. Now you say, well, Coach, well, how can I get to a place of you're doing this anyway? The reason why you believe what it is that you believe, because over a course of time, let's say that you're 20 years old, 30 years old, 40, 50, 60, 70, 80, 90, 100 years old, 110, we'll give it 120, just in case. 130, we'll cover all the bases. You've been conditioned, programmed to believe something. If you're going to believe something new, many of us have shifted our beliefs simply by listening to Neville Goddard and believing what it was that he said. This is how it happens. So you say, well, I want more money. You start learning about making money programs, and how money works. Good to see you, bro. Thought I missed you today. Good to see you. Good to have you. You start learning how money works. You start believing, oh, this is how money works. I can do that. All of a sudden, you become the person that can create a digital course and sell it for hundreds of thousands of dollars. You become a person that can take Bitcoin and multiply it. You become a person that can do real estate because now you've learned. But the other side of learning, you say, I can do that. We do this all the time. We get into a new job. I don't know how many people have stepped into a new job recently, but you get into a new job and you're like, I don't know how I'm ever going to learn this stuff. And 6 months to a year within that new job, you're the expert. This is how change takes place. You have to indoctrinate yourself into the thing that you say that you want to be, do, or have. You have to delve into it. Let's say that it's AI. You start going to tools like ChatGPT and say, okay, give me all the free AI tools that are out there. And you start learning as much as you can about AI. In 3 months, 6 months, a year, you're the expert on AI. Now all of a sudden you can demand your price. You start studying the works of Neville Goddard. You say, well, I'm going to teach Neville Goddard to this community. I know people that are teaching Neville Goddard to the French community, Spanish community, whatever. I'm going to niche mine down to this community here. I'm not trying to reach everybody, but I want to reach this community with Neville Goddard. So then you start a YouTube channel. You start showing Neville Goddard videos. You start speaking in your language, if you speak in a different language, about Neville Goddard. All of a sudden, you got a following. It doesn't matter. Baking cakes, it doesn't matter. But when you start showing up as the expert, people are going to keep coming back to find out what it is that you're offering, what it is that you're sharing. And they're going to get to a place where they know, like, and trust you. The problem is we've been conditioned in these communities that, you just think a thought one time and all of a sudden magically everything, changes. The challenge with that is your old belief systems are going to, over time, take you back to what's familiar. So you have to keep indoctrinating yourself with the new beliefs. This is how learning takes place. Repetition, 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 till it becomes retention. Whatever you want, start learning about it. Learn as much as you can. You become the expert in it. Pretty soon you're going to be that person. Whatever it is, it doesn't matter. Let me see if we can cover some more stuff before we close this down. Resist the proof of relevance. You got to understand that when you're trying to be relevant for everybody else, then you're going to lose your own authenticity. You have to be okay with being different and people not understanding you. Understanding this, that as you continue on, your audience is going to find you. I've heard so many people say to me, men and female alike, I finally found somebody that thinks similar to what it is in the laws and the principles that I talk about. There's somebody out there teaching the same thing. The confusion comes when religious people come to my site and they see what it is that I'm talking about, and they want to religiousize, as though I just made a word up, the teachings. What they really should be doing is going to a religious site and sharing their religious, but they want to come to a metaphysical site, a mindset site, quantum physics, quantum mechanics, shifting mind concepts, quantum jumping, so forth site, and spew religion. My site and the people that come and listen to me are not coming for religion. Now and again, I use religious texts as my means. Okay, the question is, this is important. The question is, if I have the opposite belief, how can I manifest? And I'm paraphrasing this, and if I mess it up, come back and you can restate it. But if I have the opposite belief, how can I manifest that which I desire? Ultimately, you won't. You have to begin shifting your beliefs. And as I stated earlier, the way you shift your beliefs is by pouring. There's a guy, he's one of the founders of when we started talking about New Thought and the science of healing and so forth. His name was Quimbley, Dr. Quimbley. And when he would encounter a sick patient, what he would have to do is counteract, disrupt their old religious thinking by giving them new evidence. If you have the opposite belief, a contrary belief, let's say that, you have to challenge the belief. And you have to challenge it repeatedly until you start believing what it is that you desire. But that only happens as you continue to pour the new evidence into yourself. The other thing is when you experience the evidence. Okay, so let's say that you have a opposite belief of money, but all of a sudden money comes into your life. You have enough how money come into your life experiences to counteract and say, well, I've done this many times. So I know that. But we write the doing off as a fluke. But what if we write the doing off as evidence to affirm what it is that we believe? See, you have to counter the opposite thinking by the thinking of what it is that you want. And even if it's not your experience, go and find other people and say, well, if these hundreds of people have done it, then I'm going to learn how to do it. That was the thing that got me through the military boot camp, long marches in the military and so forth, and even many life experiences and even growing on different platforms and so forth. I'm like, if this person can do it, and it wasn't because I'm thinking I'm smarter, it didn't have anything to do with it. What I understand is that universe, God, source, infinite intelligence, energy, is no respecter of person. So if I do what that other person is doing, I'm going to get maybe not exact results, but similar results. You can't not, especially if it's something that multiple people are reproducing. The universe doesn't care. It's like money. Money doesn't care who uses it. We can deem a person bad and say bad people shouldn't have money. Money doesn't care. If a person that we deem as bad has the consciousness to manifest money, he or she's going to manifest money. If a person that's good has the consciousness to manifest money, then she is going to manifest money. But on the contrary, the opposite belief, if they believe otherwise, even when they manifest money, the money's going to dissipate because they don't hold the energy of, I can manifest money anytime. And I'm just using money as an example because it's an easy measurement, but it can be anything. Hopefully that helps. Okay, so protect your mind. This is really important. Protect your mind like it's your most valuable asset. I would even suggest the reason why you have contrary beliefs, opposing beliefs, is because of what you're pouring into your mind still. You're allowing, it could be people talking, them, economy's hard, times are tough, watching the news. All of these things are programming you for failure. You got to turn them off. You got to turn the TV off. You got to find, if you have to be in those environments, then you have to also separate yourself, time to have time alone, and to pour in the opposite information. Watch positive movies, talks, informational programs about what it is that you're seeking to manifest. You got to see, point in case, quick story. I got a little bit of time. When I started believing that it was possible for me to attract wealth into my life, I was watching this program, and this lady owned a farm, and this farm was like worth millions of dollars, and she didn't have the money initially. She said, only thing I started to do, and this was a religious program, but she said the only thing I started to do was believe that the money was going to come. Now, at that same time, I was reading a book by the name of The Science of Getting Rich by a gentleman by the name of Wallace D. Wattles. You can find that on YouTube and listen to it for free. So bottom line is, I was pouring new information into my mind. I was listening to audio tapes. At that point, they were cassette tapes. I had this library of information. I was continuously bombarding my mind with the information of abundance. I was listening to people like Brian Tracy, Dennis Waitley, people y'all may not know, Jim Rohn, if y'all are familiar with the positive community, Les Brown. And I was continuously pouring this stuff into. Pretty soon, I started believing it was possible for money to come to me easily and effortlessly, not knowing the how, but just believing. So job opportunities started showing up. I would step into these opportunities and I would say, listen, how can I work and get to the next level of management, whatever? And I offered the best service that I could provide, not knowing how the money was going to come. I just kept offering, wherever I was, the best service that I could provide. Over a course of time, because I believed that money was coming, money come to me easily and effortlessly, money started showing up. I don't know what the thing is that you want, but you got to begin pouring into yourself the information that aligns with what it is that you want. And I almost certainly guarantee right now, the thing that's being held true is that you're pouring the opposite in. You listen to all the stuff that keeps you stuck in what it is that you don't want. And you keep wondering why it keeps showing up. It's showing up because that's the program that you're feeding it. You remember in the Matrix, now, of course, I'm doing my Morpheus look today, but you remember in the Matrix, Keanu's on the Matrix machine and so forth. And so they're able to submit programs. And they submit this martial art program, and all of a sudden he's like moving like Bruce Lee and so forth. When you're watching the negative programs, listening to the chatter in your ear, the people telling you how bad it's a negative download. So you're hooked up to this machine, the matrix, and you got this negative download, and you're like, times are tough, money is hard, you're never going to get enough to get. So the only thing that you can reproduce, because that's what you're listening to, until you put a different chip into the program, is more of that. Change the programming, change the reality. Okay, I got 2 more points. So that whole point was protect your mind because it's your most valuable asset. You got to watch what's going into your mind gate. We do this stuff so haphazard. I love action movies, but I know that in watching action movies, for me, there's a consequences. Sometimes I'm more visual and so forth. Sometimes I have to offset that by watching something else to kind of tone that down. Thank you. The whole point is you have to be mindful of what you're allowing in your mind's gate. Okay, so being a part of this community and listening to these talks and let me say this. It's said that you can know where a person's financially going to be simply by the 5 people, their 5 best friends, the people that they're surrounding themselves with. Understand this, if you're listening to this talks, if you're on my talks at any given, I'm one of your friends. So we can vibrate and grow together mentally. The wonderful thing is those 5 friends, Napoleon Hill had this laboratory, and he had the greatest minds in his mental laboratory. He had like Abraham Lincoln, all the great inventors and so forth, and he would ask them certain things. He called this his mastermind, and this is where we got the term mastermind. Now you say, well, Coach, how does it apply to me? You need to surround yourself with builders, not bystanders, not people that are watching. And I say some people are just waiting to die. That they're not producing, they're literally getting up, watch TV, eat, go to bed, waiting to die type thing. You got to surround yourself with builders. Jesus said, unless you think Coach DiCarlo is being too harsh, Master Teacher said, let the dead bury the dead. Follow me. Not follow me. Follow that inner knowing. I'm not speaking of me. I'm not me. Because I'm going to mess it up. You got to follow that inner knower. So, but surround yourself with builders. Now you say, well, Coach, I don't have a community. I don't have access to all these great. You have access to YouTube, TikTok, Instagram, Snapchat, Facebook. There's all these free communities of like-minded people. You surround yourself in these communities. You watch the videos of these people like the Joe Dispenzas, the Joseph Murphys, Neville Goddards, and so on. As those become your friends, your mindset, your evaluation, your income, your relationships, your health, they're all going to change because you've taken on a different mindset. But as long as you're still listening to the old conversation, if you're still watching the old programs, that's the program that you're submitting, and you're saying, give me more of that. Last point. The question is, and this is important because we all have them, you spend, first and foremost, you don't give them a lot of your time. Now, what do I mean that? You don't interact with them a lot. The question was, let me say the question, how can I deal with a toxic member of my family? We can't choose our family. We're born into that, but we can choose who it is that we associate with. I have family members that I love dearly, but and I have friends that I love dearly, but because of the energy that they're transmitting, I can't give them a lot of time because I'm not trying to go there. I'm trying to go somewhere else. So the directions that they're giving me with their conversations, I can't entertain that. What I'm telling you is you greet them, hey, how you doing, so forth. And if greeting turns out to be this toxic conversation, then you just kind of give them a nod, hey, but I got to go. You can't keep entertaining them in their conversation. You can't keep getting into dialogue with them, hoping to change them. Absolutely. Somebody said this, observe without judgment. Your job is not, they're where they're at. Don't judge them, don't hate them for where they're, but just don't entertain it. Masters, you said, when you're on the way to your manifestation, tell no person. Don't enter into conversation. Just go about doing what you can't always share with people that you love what it is that the divine has called you to do. You can't, because well-meaning people want you to stay where they're at because they can't see it for themselves. So they be damned if they see it for you. You share what they need to know. You have conversations that are necessary. But you don't have, listen, I got something to do. I got to go. Talk to you later and go on about your business. Pretty soon, you do that often enough, they're going to get it. Okay. He's not spending a lot of time with me. Or you can try to entertain them by trying to appease them. I'm done with appeasing. On my YouTube channel, sometimes I get into these conversations with people because I tell them I'm not appeasing. And if you don't like what's on the channel, go to another channel. But people say, spiritual people shouldn't talk like that. They should just be welcoming of everybody and just, get kicked in the head and let them step on your neck. I'm not that person. I'm not that person, and I'm not going to be that person. People put on fronts. What I want to be with you is fully authentic. So the me that you're seeing on camera is if we had some coffee, if we were talking, if we went out to dinner, would be the exact same me, love him or hate him, the same me that you'll be interacting with. All these spiritual teachers get on and act like they're so holy, that they're manifesting all this abundance and, anything that they get. Life happens. They say S happens. You know what S is. I don't need to say it. Crap happens. And it happens to all of us. So for those people that give you the impression that they're doing everything right and everything's working out, they're lying to you. I only tell you that they're lying to you because somebody said, well, Coach, you shouldn't be so negative. They're lying to you. But the reason why I'm telling you that they're lying to you is because I want you to understand that you're doing everything right. The problem is we observe other people and they tell us how all this stuff works out and things work out so perfectly. And you say, what am I doing wrong? Why isn't God, blessing me like he's blessing them? God's no respecter of person. So if it's more money that you want, you can have more money. But understand there's challenges that come with more money. I'm speaking from experience. There's challenges to improving your health. There's challenges to being in a loving relationship. Don't think that you're just going to step into it and all of a sudden it's going to be fairy tale. There's going to be challenges, but that's how you grow in those situations. The challenges are to make you better, not to cause you to go in reverse. I've overstepped my time, so I want to just get into the last point real quick. Fulfill it. Whatever your genius is, whatever you've been called to do, live it out. Just live it out. Don't worry about what anybody's going to say. I have this idea, this concept for a course, a digital course. And when I thought about the title, I was really uncomfortable because I was worried about what people were going to say. And it told me at that moment, that's the title you're supposed to have. When something feels uncomfortable for you to do, it's probably what you need to do. Listen, guys, this is Coach DiCarlo. Enjoy your holiday weekend for those who are in the U.S. If you're somewhere else, enjoy your day, enjoy your life. I'll speak with you next week. I was going to say I will hope to speak with you next week, but I'm going to give an affirmation and I'll speak with you guys next week and we'll have something else life sharing. But understand this, go back and listen to this talk. It's going to pour into you so much. It's about you discovering your genius, and you are a genius. You are. And when you begin to own that and you begin to live from that, you're going to see the results. Love you guys. Thank you. And we'll talk next week. Have a great one.